Is the Pac-12 going to be forced to go mostly streaming on this next TV deal? We'll pull up a chair, sit back, relax, and we're going to talk about it. What is up, college sports fans, fellow members of Mountaineer Nation? This is Coos. Welcome into another edition of Coos' Corner. Pull that chair up and let me serve you up this shot of top shelf college football content. On tap in today's episode, we're going to talk about the Pac-12 latest update in their TV negotiations, and we're going to talk about an article from Forbes magazine that talks about the Pac-12 and how they might get an offer they can't refuse, but it might be mostly streaming. And to talk about this today, I've got a very special guest, the man who wrote this article himself, none other than Jim Williams. Jim, how are you doing today?
I'm well, thank you, Coos. It's nice to be here, and I'm really pleased to be around a lot of my friends and family who live in the Morgantown area up there, and it's a wonderful place to be, and it's a pleasure to be with you.
Absolutely. Pleasure to have you on. And yeah, I do have quite a few listeners in the Morgantown area. So hopefully maybe someone that, one of your friends or family members are listening to this, hopefully. And if so, we appreciate it.
Well, if not, they will be by the end of the day.
I hear you. Well, thank you for that. Real quick, I want to dive into this article. Obviously, I've read several of your articles lately because you've done several on the Pac-12 and their TV negotiations and that kind of thing. But the one you did today, I really thought was something I wanted to cover. And it was titled Pac-12 or will Amazon or Apple TV make an offer that the Pac-12 can't say no to? It's basically the title of this article.
Right.
Can you just basically tell my listeners what's behind this article and what you had to say in this article?
Sure, because basically the deal is that I wanted to give people a feeling for why the Pac-12 and Amazon and Apple TV and all of that is so important to the conference. Apple TV and Amazon were basically grown and birthed, if you will, by a number of graduates who are alumni of schools in the Pac-12. And the theory of my case in the article is that, when I first sat down to write it, was to explain how hard it would be to say no to them when, let's say you're the president of Stanford or you're the president of the University of Washington, right? Mm-hmm. And you've been taking Amazon's money now for the better part of a decade, and you've had Jeff Bezos and some of his key people over to the campus, and you're touting that Amazon is part of the University of Washington. I mean, they've got as I write in the article, they've got incubator programs with the university. You go down to Stanford and Cal, and Tim Cook and the Apple folks have been, down there, and they've got incubator programs throughout that whole situation. So on one hand, you're saying, streaming was built here. This is where streaming came from. We the University of Washington, the University of Stanford University, University of California, University of Oregon, we've all been involved in it, and then all of a sudden you're going to turn around and tell them no. So the theory at the first was, okay, so they're going to probably do a deal with ESPN. So how do they can they make this work between the three of them? Is it possible that this all works out? Then ESPN supposedly, and I say supposedly because in doing these deals you never know. Supposedly is an hourly thing. Supposedly they walked away. So is it possible that Apple TV, which by the way in the article I reference, Tim Cook in 2019 sent his guys over to talk to the people, and we're talking now that was 5 years before the deal was even up, to talk about what would be the possibility of Apple TV, who had only been on for less than a month, going after, the media rights. And it was clear that all the media rights, not just, digital, they wanted the whole ball of wax.
Right.
So they spent time at the network I've been at the network. It's a phenomenal facility, and they actually have it where they can produce a football game and basketball game and all of that without ever using a remote truck, because they do fiber optic, and they've got a really cool thing where they can produce and direct everything from fibers. They have 5 control rooms in the San Francisco Bay Area. So it's a very intricate and very if you're producing programming like that, which I did, in a former life, it the idea of not going and sitting in a remote truck, but being able to do it from a studio is pretty amazing. And the fact that that was, part of this whole process, and the Apple people have been there since day one looking at it. And Tim Cook is a huge, sports fan. He's a graduate of Auburn, and he's often seen, on the sidelines of football games down there. He got a graduate degree, I should say, from Duke. And so, when it's basketball season, he's over, with Coach K sitting there. So Tim Cook loves sports. And so there's been a focus, even, even with USC and UCLA gone, to take it. So the theory of the case here is, if the presidents have to say yes to the deal, because they think it's a good idea, is it something that the athletic directors can live with? And so there might be a bit of a, and again, we're assuming that the money is within reasonable amount.
Right.
So 28 to 31, something in that ballpark. So George Kliavkoff knows what the money is. Can he get the money? Where's he going to get the money? And what, at the end of the day, what is his final case that he's going to have to plead to the presidents? Because the presidents, at the end of the day, I think it's very important for people to remember, conference commissioners do not work for the athletic department. Okay, they work for the presidents. And sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes the presidents and the athletic department don't see eye to eye.
Right.
So that's pretty much the theory of the case there. Now, let me put a caveat on this, okay? And that is this. We have a saying in Washington which basically goes like this: those who are talking usually don't know. Those who aren't talking know. And so right now, a lot of people are talking. They don't know how it's going to end. I honestly, because I'm telling you right now, I don't know how it ends. I give you some options in there based on what we have known. But I mean, it's really just based on what those options are based on, Apple, Amazon, and ESPN.
Right. Well, yeah, and you're right. I don't think any of us actually know what's going to happen. We can all make our assumptions or speculate, which is, what we all love to do, right? We all love I mean, that's most what YouTube is built on anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
It's speculation. But so if I didn't speculate some, I probably wouldn't have any followers.
Yeah, I'm with you there, Coos. I get the point.
But you're right. We don't. At the end of the day, nobody actually knows. And like you said, this conference realignment stuff, these TV deals, this stuff's always kept behind closed doors. It's very seldom leaked out. So the fact that all this stuff's coming out now is a little shocking to me. That's why I think most of it, or at least a huge portion of it, we probably have to take with a grain of salt.
Right.
And I've acknowledged that on my show. At least I think I have. I've tried to anyway. And I still think at the end of the day, the conference is going to end up landing some kind of deal that they can live with. It may not be what they want. Right. I think it'll be something they can live with, because I think deep down they do want to stay together. But what my thing is, though, like you mentioned earlier, the ADs, will they be on board with this, and how much pull will they have? Because we heard Arizona's president come out in an interview just a couple of days ago. Yes, he said he was showing solidarity with his fellow Pac-12 members, but he also said that, and this is in a report by Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports, by the way.
Dennis is a good guy.
That he said that, it's number one, we got to wait and see what the deal is. And he also said, we're not willing to go, let me back up. He said, I'm not willing to go more than 50% streaming. So is there a way, and I think you kind of cover this in your article, which, by the way, for those of you listening and watching here, I'm going to put a link to that in the description of the video and of the podcast episode in the description box section. A link to this article on Forbes where you can go check it out for yourself. Jim does a great job there. And also, if you want to find Jim on Twitter, you can find him at JW Media DC. Is that correct, Jim?
Yeah, JW Media DC, right.
Okay. But anyway, he talks about how, if it's more than 50% streaming, he's not interested in that. Do you think there's a way to make this deal, whether it be through subleasing or whatever, that they would be able to do this deal without having to have more than 50% streaming?
Well, here's where I think the if I'm negotiating the deal, all right, if I put myself in George Kliakoff's place,
mm-hmm.
and I've done deals before, so I'm thinking, okay, what can I do? Eric Shanks, who is the president of Fox Sports, okay, just did a deal with Apple for the MLS, where they're airing 15 games, which are being produced by Apple, but they're airing on Fox. So Fox mm-hmm. basically doesn't have to do anything but air the games. If let's say for the sake of argument that Apple comes up with $28 million and Amazon comes in with another, $2 or $3 million. So we're now at 31 or 32, right? Mm-hmm. But we still do not have a partner that's that's linear.
Right.
So I'm going to call Eric up and I'm going to say, okay, Eric, look, I need 10 games, 10 football, and we'll say 10 basketball, okay? I need to have those on Fox. I'll barter that time. I'm giving you the games. You give me the airtime so that I can have my, sponsors. You have some availabilities on there. And because for Apple and Amazon are paying the freight, but I have to have linear. Mm-hmm. And let me say that I believe if you look in the article, you'll see where in the MLS deal, they didn't have they meaning Apple didn't have any trouble with that. Okay, right. They understood it. They understand that to get to where they need to go, being on linear television is a good thing. So if Eric says no, then I pick up the phone and call CBS and say, okay, guys, here's the deal. But here's where I think Eric may not say no. If I say to Eric, here's what I want. I would like you to do, I want you to take the package, the Pac-12 After Dark package, which ESPN has, had for a number of years. And basically, you can have that package for FS1, but you need to take some football on Fox, main Fox. Now, Eric knows what the numbers are for Pac-12 After Dark, which are really good. And that's mainly because football fans, have watched all day and they like a 10:30 game. So what that does is and let's go with the ifs here, if the Pac-12 can stay together, if Apple has, if ESPN has stepped out of it, what did I just do? I blocked ESPN from having any games on the West Coast because the Big Ten owns the rights to USC and UCLA. If the Pac-12 is at Apple and at Fox, ESPN has no games on the West Coast. So I think what I could do if I say to bring back ESPN to the equation is I say, look, okay, fine, I get you're playing hardball. here's what we're going to do. If you don't take the package, we'll bid that package out. Now, is that going to help me? If I can get, the point that I'm trying to make is I can get linear. Okay. It may not be on a network that you want, meaning athletic directors may. I don't know what the obsession is with ESPN. I will say that. And I work with them. They paid me money. I have no problem or beef with ESPN. I'm saying that straight up front.
Right.
But my point is, if the Big Ten had no problem cutting ESPN out of everything.
Right.
So I guess what I'm saying here is, how much airtime are you going to get if you've got a brand new SEC contract, an ACC contract, which, has a ton of content, a Big 12 contract that you've got. Oh, and by the way, you happen to have the NBA, the NHL, and Major League Baseball. Where do I fit in that package? Hell,
Right.
where does the Big 12 fit in that package?
Right. That's definitely a concern I've had. I mean, even though the Big 12 got a deal with ESPN, or they're part of the deal, they're majority rights holder. When you think about all the inventory that they already have,
right,
we're probably going to have most of our games relegated to ESPN Plus.
Unfortunately, unfortunately, they'll have the quote unquote big games on. They'll find a place to put it.
Right.
But you're right about the ESPN Plus, and don't forget that Bob Iger, yesterday they cut 7,000 jobs, and the edict is from Iger that we got to put stuff on the streaming thing. We got to make ESPN Plus, profitable, and the only way we can make it profitable is to put content on it. And so you're right about that, and I wrote that, in the deal that the potential deal that ESPN and the Pac-12 would have is there's no doubt in my mind that the majority of the Pac-12 would end up on ESPN Plus, and there'd be one or two games that would end up on the network as we know it. But I think at the end of the day, the most important thing here is what's going to happen. I think the important thing, if you're a West Virginia fan, is I would want the Pac-12 to stay together. Now, here's why. Okay. The Big Ten, the Big Ten and the SEC's contracts come up at the same time in 26, 27. Okay. If there's going to be cherry picking at that point in time, that's when it's going to happen. Okay. Oregon and Washington can scream all they want to. They're not getting in the Big Ten until, for a few years yet.
Right.
So if we're at that tipping point, there might be everybody I'm talking to at the Big Ten and other places are looking at the ACC. What's going to happen? Is FSU and Clemson and North Carolina and some of these other schools going to do a jailbreak, and get out of this deal, or how's that going to work, right? So that affects West Virginia. If because I know the Big Ten has, would love to have Georgia Tech. Said love to have a presence in the South. They pick strategically, because they don't.
Right.
They're not. It's not necessarily, are they picking for the best teams on the planet? I think Rutgers can prove that that's not the case. And I imagine, without getting too much trouble, Maryland would fall in that same category. But well, that's not fair. Maryland's better than Rutgers. But anyway, you get my point. The point is that they tend to go strategic. They don't necessarily want multiples, and I think that's where Kevin Warren got himself into. I'm not going to say trouble, because that would, I don't want to put out there a negative connotation with that situation, but philosophically, they'll put it that way. philosophically, Kevin Warren was far more aggressive on expansion than the Big Ten ever had interest in.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm saying that not only I was talking to a West Virginia booster the other day, and I said, and he's all, he's George Kliakoff or no, I'm sorry, not George Kliakoff. Brent Yormark is, he loves Brent. He says,
Mm-hmm.
he's my guy, right? But he said, he goes, really? You're going to bring Gonzaga in here? He goes, how far do we have to go to play sports?
Right.
I mean, they've kind of forgot the eastern part of the country.
Yeah.
You've got these 4 West schools, and that's great. But, what happens to the East Coast? I mean, think how far you guys in US and UCF have to go.
Mm-hmm.
You got 1,000 miles. I'm sure West Virginia spends $2.5 million more than any other team in the conference to travel.
Yep. Yes, sir.
So that 31 ain't 31.
Nope, not for us. It's not.
No. So where's the fair? Where's the love? I kind of think that West Virginia, and this is not, I'm not hating on the Big 12 at all. I kind of think that the Big 12 has never helped West Virginia.
Well, I mean, they haven't in some ways, but in some they have. I mean, when we joined the Big 12, they were kind of a life raft for us.
Oh no, that part I get. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying I guess I worded that indelicately, and I apologize.
No, you didn't.
The way I should have worded it is that West Virginia has not necessarily been thought of as often as they should have been in how they strategically have expanded.
I got you. That makes sense. Yeah, I get what you're saying, and I've sensed that too. But I mean, I guess at the end of the day, the way I've been able to kind of rationalize it in my own mind is they can't make decisions for an entire conference based on one school. That's kind of how I've rationalized it in my head.
Right.
And I get that. But at the same time, I feel like we have been a valuable member of the conference. I mean, I feel like they needed us as well when we joined because they were needing somebody else.
Well, West Virginia. West Virginia brings a great deal to the table, and anytime that they have games out there, they realize it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that part of it, and again, I'm not hating on the Big 12. I'm just saying, the shiny objects is they're getting P5 schools. Okay, that's the shiny object. If you remember the original theory of the case that they were talking about was Memphis and USF and and Tulane and some of those schools to balance them out because they were a Western conference in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Basic, mainly Texas. So anyway, I've spoken way too much, so I'm gonna let you.
No, it's okay. I love
it. You go ahead and talk.
They get tired of hearing me talk, Jim. It's nice to have somebody else talk for a change.
So, but that's basically the theory of the article is that the DNA of the Pac-12 is in these 2 streaming companies, and can you say no to them, and can they afford to do it? The answer to that question is yes, they can afford to say no. They can. However, what does that get you?
Well, it might be it might get them teams leaving the conference at some point.
No, that's what I'm saying. What does it? But let me ask you the question. What you leave the conference, right? And then in 5 years, you realize you left the conference, but the chairs on the deck are shuffling, and a better deal. You left the bet. You left because you were short-sighted,
mm-hmm.
and you left the opportunity to end up in maybe a better situation.
Right. Yeah, that's very possible. The only saving grace will be the fact that the Big 12's TV deal is only for 6 years. So even if they do go to the Big 12 and say they're not happy about it, let's just throw Colorado in there, for example. If Colorado goes to the Big 12, and then that are part of the 6-year deal that goes through 2031. And then all of a sudden in 2031, they have a chance to go to the Big Ten. I don't think that being in the Big 12 is going to hinder that necessarily.
Well, yeah. I don't think. I think if Colorado goes, they're going to stay in the Big. They'll stay in the Big. I think all of them. If the four corner schools go, I think they'll all stay in the Big 12. There'd be no reason for them to leave. There's just kind of like a buyer's remorse, okay? And if you asked, and I'm sure you've asked fans at Pitt and Boston College and Syracuse, and I know I have, and they're all like, I don't. It seemed like a good idea to get into the ACC, but they're now all wishing they were back in the, they all have the Big East. They all want the Big East back. Well, you should have thought about that before you left. It's like that. It's like that old song. You don't know what you got until until it's gone.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, West Virginia probably wouldn't have left had they not all left, because we were kind of left holding the bag, so to speak.
Right. Yeah.
Us and Louisville.
Right.
Actually, they didn't even add Louisville until after some of the other schools left. But you get my point. I mean, there was just not many football schools left, so
there wasn't even much options on the way.
We were on the any votes that were taking place, we were going to be on the short end of the stick because we weren't a quote unquote basketball only school.
I'm not going to tell Bob Huggins that.
Right? No, you're right. Absolutely. Now, right now, we probably are a basketball first school because they're having more success, but. But at the end of the day, Jim, in your opinion, do you think the Pac-12 ends up making a deal and staying together?
I'm going to go with yes, and I'm going to go with it's not going to be something they like, but I think that honestly, Kuz, it really takes a lot to transfer conferences because there's so much in the way of logistical situations and I mean it costs a lot of money to it's like taking and saying, well, Kuz, you live in West Virginia right now, but I really you're gonna love it here in in California or in Florida or whatever. It costs you to move, okay?
Right.
Well, think about moving an entire athletic department. Okay, you've got to change everything. You've got to, the theory now is you've got to, you have to book hotels and airspace and all that other stuff that you have to do. So moving is not without its issues. And by the way, those four schools who come into the conference aren't going to get the full 31 million right from the get-go.
Right. They'd only get 20, a ballpark. Yeah.
They get about 60% of the deal. So what are they moving for?
Right.
So this is not me hating on the Big 12. This is me saying that I think they stay together. And honestly, the Big 12 has no problem. It's not going to have any problems expanding if they want to. And look at this. I mean, think about the possibility of the Big 12 in 4 years' time or 5 years' time when we get to that TV deal, getting some of the ACC schools.
Right. That would be ideal for West Virginia. I mean,
what if you ended up with Virginia Tech? What if you ended up with Pitt? These are all possibilities because the ACC, and again, it all depends on that jailbreak. Can they break out of the contract? But there's a lot of flexibility coming in college sports, and I just think that people need to take a breath. And if something happens and the Pac-12, no longer is the Pac-12 anymore, and it goes, well, then that's just the way it goes. It happens. We all live through the big. I was sad to see, the good old Big East go, but it went. And so conferences come and go, but I do hope that that at the end of the day that everybody gets what they want, and if that means moving, then so be it. But I do think they're going to be able to get a deal. Is it going to be what they like or want? Probably not, but but we'll see. I mean,
Yeah.
as I said before, I don't know. I just write about it. When it comes, we'll find out. But I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you. And anytime you need anything, you got my number, and feel
Yeah.
free.
Thank you, Jim. I really appreciate it. Everybody, once again, I'm going to leave a link to the article in the description box. He's written a lot of other great articles as well, so go check out his work on Zinger News and on Forbes. His name is Jim Williams. Also, he's also a 7-time Emmy-winning producer. Is that right, Jim? So
Yeah, producer, director. And so, look, the good news is that I know where to get a good hot dog in Morgantown.
there
So
you go. There you go.
that's all about it. But look, Coos, I wish you and the Mountaineer faithful all the best. And it's been a treat to be here. And please, take care and
You too,
have a
Jim.
good season. And I'm sure we'll catch up somewhere down the line.
Yes, Jim. Thank you. Thanks again,
Thank
and you
you.
have a great day.
And you as well.
So there you go, everyone. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Mr. Jim Williams. It was a treat to have him on my show. I could have talked to him for another 30 minutes at least. I had other questions I would like to have asked, but he was on a tight schedule today. So hopefully I'll be able to get him back on at some point in the future. And also want to apologize. I noticed about halfway through that my normal microphone here is not working, so I'm having to use the mic on my webcam, which is not quite as good. So I apologize if the sound is not as crisp as it normally is. I hope you enjoyed the interview nonetheless. Guys, I asked that if you haven't yet, please support my show. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit the like button. If you're listening to this on podcast platforms, please subscribe to my podcast. Please leave a rating if you wouldn't mind. Below that'll really help me. Please leave a comment as well. Both of those help on YouTube or on the podcast. And then share that out. Let people know about Cougars Corner. I cover West Virginia Mountaineer football. I cover Big 12 football. And I cover the conference realignment as much as possible. At times, I do get tired of talking about conference realignment, but I also really enjoy speculating and seeing what's going to happen with all these various deals and all these various rumors that are out there. But if you like that kind of stuff, this is the channel and the podcast for you. Please subscribe and join me here and help me grow this thing as we continue to build and grow here at Cougars Corner. And by the way, I want to give a shout out as well to Blue Ridge Coffee Crafters. They are a supporter here of the show. I'm going to leave a link to their website if you want to go purchase some coffee. It's all natural coffee. There's no chemicals in it. It comes from hand-picked coffee beans. So go get you some coffee from Blue Ridge Coffee Crafters. If you use the link in my description box and put Cougars, COUZ' in the description or in the comment box at time of purchase, I will get a small commission from the sale. You can also check out my merch store, my Fanatic store, all that in the description box as well. All that's there for your benefit. Join my channel if you want. Take advantage of the perks there. But nonetheless, with all that being said, I really appreciate you tuning in to another episode of Cougars Corner. And until the next one, Q Country Roads.